Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the I Am 1-2 podcast with your host, Christopher Cohn. And with me, as always, is my great dear friend and producer, and thank God he is doing such a kick-ass job to keep these videos edited and online. Dan the Man, everybody. Say hello, Dan, to everybody.
Hello, everyone. How's everybody doing out there?
Hell yeah. Well, you guys will be catching up with this podcast later, but we have officially entered summer. The solstice just happened. Longest day of the year. I was lucky to go on a trip one year with a bunch of Tibetan monks where they actually honor the solstice and do a whole prayer ceremony with chanting and singing bowls. And it made me realize, wow, we're really disconnected from the earth and how we go through these changes that are pretty significant. And we just pass them on like, yeah, just another day. So recovery gives you those opportunities to reevaluate. Longest day of the year, shortest day of the year, those are major markers that actually used to be celebrated in civilizations in the past. But summer is here. The living is easy. We are lucky today. We have one of those cooler, less humidity days here. Mm-hmm. It's just so nice. I mean, the greenery day, and I don't know if you noticed, we passed the spring bright greenery, but it hasn't gotten dry and too hot yet. So everything's still really green and beautiful. Did you notice that?
Yeah. I think that rain yesterday boosted stuff.
Definitely.
I think it did. I think it was on the edge of starting to get kind of dry. I started noticing the grass and all that, and it rained significantly yesterday.
We got 1.14 inches here around our area, and like Paoli, it said 0.014
really?
or something. Yeah. So it's really particular. So wherever you are, what I'm bringing that up for to start is enjoy your summer. Get out, have some fun, let your kid go swimming or do something different, swing on a park swing. Just get out and enjoy the sunshine before we have to go back into hibernation again, depending on where you live. So if you're just joining us on the I Am 1-2 podcast, this is a podcast about all things recovery. You might ask, recovery from what? And we say from everything. Our entire world, everything from the air you breathe to the water you drink to the food you're eating to the people you're encountering. Sick, as we say in the rooms. And it affects you. And it takes a toll on your spirit. It takes a toll on your outlook, your attitude. And so we hope you can come in here like a refuge and get a little bit of tools, get a little bit of inspiration, and maybe begin your own recovery journey, whatever it is that you feel like you need to recover from. And remember, we always say in here, the word recovery means to go back and reclaim that which has been lost or stolen, which is your original child spirit when you were 4 or 5 years old and you couldn't wait to jump out of bed and say, let's play. Where's that guy gone to? When you woke up this morning, as my old spiritual teachers used to say, did you wake up saying, good morning, God? Or did you wake up saying, good God, it's morning? So, welcome. We're glad you're here. So the format of our podcast is we will have a education portion with a topic every week. Great, important topic to talk about today, technology and its effects on us. And then we will have a little banter period with Dan the Man so we can get a good viewpoint from our good friend Dan over across the table from me. And then we'll have questions that we take from you every week. So please send them in to us on the iam12recovery@gmail.com. That's the email address. iam12, those 4 digits, add the word recovery at Gmail. And please send them in anonymous. We will not mention your name. You can ask any question about any problem you might be having in life, and we will try to bring some experience, strength, and hope to help you along, which is the greatest gift of recovery. We always say, what's the greatest gift? Here we go, Dan.
Yep.
But one of them is having a tribe. I said this to my group today, tribal knowledge. We've lost that. It used to be in the old times when we lived together and survived together, we had elders who we could go to and say, what do I do with this situation? Now you what? Go to a therapist? Most people don't. Talk to your friend, maybe over a drink, what the hell? But really having people who have been through things and they know what works and they know what doesn't. And that is a gift, whatever meeting you join. And we are all about starting meetings for everyone to learn about the 12 steps. So stay tuned. The book should be out in fall, and we are working hard on all that. All right, let's get to the topic, because I know you're impatient, ready to go. Don't click away yet. See, we're going to talk about technology and how it sped us all up and how the toll it's taking on our spirit, and it's affecting our children. It's affecting the way we treat each other. And I just wanted to sort of give an overview. A lot of this we all are aware of, but I'll tell you what the interesting thing is. We can all point to that video most of us have seen about that woman who's staring into her cell phone at the mall, and she trips and falls into the fountain. And we all go, oh, stupid, blah, blah, blah. I won't say it, stupid, blah, blah, blah. And we all go, yeah, look at them, totally absorbing their phone. They're wrong. They're stupid. They shouldn't be doing that. And rarely can we see ourselves doing it. We rarely, it's so easy to point out someone else's obsession with technology and not see how we are completely absorbed as well. So that's what I want to invite you today is sort of take a look at yourself, reevaluate, and you can decide for yourself how much you want technology in your life and how much you need to have just some time to live without all the technological bells and whistles and stuff. So how did this happen? We all know 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have any of this. It's astonishing. I was trying to think back to the early 90s when we didn't even have home computers. And I remember getting my first computer as a word processing computer in 94 or something like that. And it was like state of the art, but it was this big old gigantic box, right? And we didn't have to worry about if you're not home, you didn't get the message. And we did have answering machines, but when Dan and I were growing up, we didn't even have answering machines, right?
No, we didn't have them. I remember when they showed up, and we really never had them around our house growing up.
So if you weren't home, you didn't know what happened.
Yeah, you didn't even get to miss call. You didn't have any idea that somebody tried to call.
So just consider that one aspect, right? Just taking that one little pressure off us of having to return a call or worry about listening to my messages and what's going on. Just that one little piece. Maybe made us more peaceful, maybe made us more tolerant and not as keyed up, okay? So then we had these cell phones come along, and the problem, I think, is that we didn't have a manual for what we were getting ourselves into. This tends to be the pattern, and we're doing this right now with AI. It's very scary. We are adopting this because of profit, because the corporations want to make money, so they're going to force it on us, and we consumers are going to go out and buy it so they make money and supports our 401ks. The system keeps flowing, but we are adopting this technology without any guidelines, without any ethics, without any, how do I manage this so it doesn't ruin my child's life? So, as we said, and you will hear this a lot in this podcast, in the first episode about addiction, we said it's not your fault. I want to invite you to take that off of you. So, okay, we're not here. I'm not going to bash you that bad cell phone user with a rolled up newspaper. But I am going to invite you to start observing. One of the great Buddhist traditions in most Eastern religions is to take yourself out of ego and be the observer. And just sort of watch yourself as you do things and observe, say, that's interesting. Why did I react that way? What's controlling me? Something outside of myself, or am I making my own decisions? So this thing is foisted on us, and it's like join the club, FOMO. If I don't have one, I don't fit in. If I don't have one, I'm not keeping up. And so we all adopted it, and now we're in this rat race. It's kind of interesting. I just went through the process. I'm sure you've dealt with this, where my phone filled up with space, and it was downright dictatorial that I was going to get a new phone. I kept deleting every program I possibly could. A lot of it was bloatware I couldn't get off. But I'm deleting everything, and I would gain 2 gigs, and it would tell me, nope, you're full again. And I'm like, so it was basically pushing me with an iron bar to get a new phone. And so you get this new phone, and even Dan was saying, oh, man, I'm kind of a little jealous. I didn't think about getting a new phone, blah, blah, blah. And we get that way, right? I got to tell you, I got this phone, no difference. Anybody that's out there FOMOing about the new model, no difference. You know anything I notice? Apps open up a little bit faster. It's blazingly fast, right? I can open up apps. But as far as functionality and how I use it every day, everything's the same. Like literally. And yet I'm several $100s lighter, almost $1,000. And that just makes the system go on. So, again, we're plugged in. We don't have a choice at this point, but we got to find a way to navigate it. And hopefully during this show, we will help you with that, okay? All right, so a lot of you know about this, but I'll give an overview. I don't want this to turn into one of those. You can go on YouTube and find a ton of videos about the algorithms that social media companies and your apps use to keep you engaged, which is the goal. They want your attention. They want your focus, and how they use that focus with their algorithms to sort of steer your activity. You may not believe this. Your ego may think you're making your own decisions, but they're trying to steer you to click this way, like swipe left, swipe right. I'm doing it backwards. Swipe left, swipe right. Or to click on the next video because of anticipation and that dopamine drip. And then essentially the tech companies, with all of their billions of dollars of resources and experts, have found out a way to hack our Paleolithic mind. See, we are in a technological age where our Paleolithic mind from the old times has not caught up. And so we are easily exploited. Like if I wave a bone in front of a dog, that dog's going to wave its tail and go, and start drooling. That's kind of how they figured out what to do with us with technology. And that creates longer engagement. And the more you're engaged, they make more money from the advertisers, et cetera, and from selling your information and from controlling your behaviors. But we won't go down that dark rabbit hole. But again, this is real. And anybody that has not been exposed to any of this, I invite you to really start to look and watch yourself as you're observing your behaviors. Why did I click on that next video? Because I'm not really interested in seeing that negative stuff. Because what they have found out is the more negative bent it is, or this new phrase they're using called outragification. I think it's a stunning phrase. The outragification of politics, the outragification of social community issues. And if they can throw a bullet out there that's like, what? How dare they? Guaranteed you'll click on the next link. They have found the way to manipulate our emotions because if it's all calm and sweet and everything, you will get bored and you'll disengage. It's a lot more anticipatory and dopamine releasing where you're like, ooh, electric, what's that? Ooh, exciting, what's that? Ooh, what's that? And you will be drawn towards conflict. And YouTube is one of the biggest drivers of this. And as I've said, there's a ton of tech people who have gone live on, to reveal the secrets on YouTube. There's a great movie if you're on Netflix to watch. It's called The Social Dilemma. The Social Dilemma, which I think should be required viewing for each American, because these are the people who are in the tech industry who design the apps you use. So these are the insiders. They made Instagram, Facebook, all the apps you use, and they figured out how to hack your mind. So the way they say it is like literally there's an avatar of you in the digital world, somewhere on the internet, and then there's you, and they're figuring out, okay, he likes this. They mark that down the list, and they're building your personality online so they can steer the right ads to you, more likely that you will buy. Because again, they want to get in your pocketbook, right? In addition to your attention, they want you to spend money. So, and anytime, I just had this yesterday, I went on a site. I've never even been on this site. And they dared to ask me if I could cancel my ad blocker so that they could better my experience by tailoring ads to my personal preferences. In other words, give us your information. And be very careful about that, folks. Like when you go to the grocery store maybe, or the coffee shop or whatever, a local mom and pop shop, and they ask you, what's your name? What's your address? What's your phone number? It's like, why do you need that? I'm just buying a cup of coffee. But again, it's just putting us more into the system. And if you're more and more into the system, it's harder to opt out. It's harder to be off the grid. That's all. You may notice that your mailbox fills up with all sorts of junk mail all of a sudden. Well, maybe you gave away too much information to some website, and now they've sent it to all their advertisers, and now they're targeting you. It's astonishing how fast that works. Watch it. All right. And by the way, I heard a guy say he debunked the myth, but he said it in an interesting way. He said, people will say, and you may have had this experience. Dan and I talk about this a lot. You were thinking about a certain shoe. And, you were thinking, I really like this shoe, the way it sounds, the way it fits. I really like this pair of shoes. And then you go online and suddenly there's an ad in your email, like on the side for that very shoe. And then we all have that paranoia. Is my phone listening to me? What the hell? First of all, you are being tracked. So anybody that's paranoid and says, they're going to put a chip in us, track us everywhere. No, you have a cell phone. You've already opted out your privacy. They can tell where you are at any time and any day just by tracking you through cell phone. But with the ad thing, what he said is we don't need to have that. We don't need to listen. We already know your preference from your online behavior. And that gave me chills. I was like, okay, so you know exactly what kind of shoe I'm going to buy or be drawn to. So this is about taking some of that control back and looking out for yourself and your own personal information. There's a mantra that I have that I try to teach all of my patients, and that is make technology your servant, not the reverse. And unfortunately, when you see people who respond like a dog seeing a squirrel, as soon as their phone goes ding, and they drop their conversation and pick it up and ignore you, that is being a servant of technology. At that very moment, when you were in the moment of your life, enjoying your friend, having your coffee, enjoying the environment, and it took you out of that reality and said, no, over here, pal. And it is as demanding as a craving for a cigarette smoker to have a cigarette. If you've ever been with a heavy smoker and they haven't had a cigarette in a while, they will start to jones in front of you. And if you know some cell phone people, again, easier to see in others than it is in ourselves, if they haven't looked at their screen in a while, they get downright panicky. So, again, make technology your servant, not the other way around. And when we're talking about technology, I just don't want to pick on the cell phones because we got the big old TV in our home, and we got the subscription services for the Netflix and Paramount and all the other ones that we use. And I heard a fellow talking about that little spinning button that allow them to use at the end of an episode, and it's counting down 14, 13, 12, and it's being used to create that, I can't miss out. Almost like you're on a game show, and you got to press a button to go to the next episode, and suddenly you've watched the whole series, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning, right? Mm-hmm. That is being controlled. That is affecting my health. That is affecting my serenity. So just be aware. Like I said, we're all caught up. I'm totally okay if you first see it in your friends. Just look around at their behaviors. Watch them being controlled. Watch how they always have to have noise on. Like they're afraid of being with their own thoughts or being alone with themselves. You know, they have to constantly turn on music when they get in the car or listen to a talk show or put on a crime drama as soon as they get home, you know, just for background noise. So look for it first in others, but then start to stand back and observe yourself and say, oh my gosh, I'm in the matrix too. All right. So there is one piece of advice that the tech people, these are the people who made the apps on the Social Dilemma movie. This is the one thing they were asked at the end is, what do we do? What can we do? And they all said the same thing. Turn off your notifications. Do not give those sites, those apps, those news alerts, none of that, the right to interfere and interrupt your day. Okay? Now, if you have children and you want to have an app that they need you for an emergency ride home or something like that, that's a different story. But you can go into your app controls and you can turn off all your notifications for each app. And then that way, you are deciding when you look at the phone. The phone is not deciding when you look at it, okay? Another great tool I tell my patients is an app that most people don't use on their phone. Do you know what the number one app is that is on every single phone, Dan, that most people do not use?
What's that?
It's called an off button.
Off button.
You actually have an off button where you can completely shut down your phone, not put it on silent, but say, screw you. Now, how hard is that to do? And I want everybody to invite yourself. How hard is that to do to completely unplug? And by the way, you know, even though it's off, they can still track you, but you could leave it at home. But when you're doing something important in your life, maybe your child's birthday party. This is a 1 year, 2 year birthday party you're never going to get to see again. I'll tell you, I was listening to a comedian, very successful one, talk about all the people that videotape his concert, you know, and it's like you're missing the experience. Meanwhile, everybody's got it videotaped. It'll always be there forever. You can go on YouTube and watch it if you want to watch it again. And how many of those things that you videotaped from a concert that do you actually go back and look at again? I've gone back maybe once or twice to see an ELO concert I saw in Minneapolis in 2019. That's it. And I spent all that time, oh, great video, you know, share this with everybody. No, I don't share with anybody, you know. I was there, you know. But you're not present for the experience. It takes you out of that moment. So again, notifications, kill them. Do not let the phone control you. Technology is a servant, and we're getting very lazy about this. I guarantee it, when it comes along and somebody's allowed to put Google in their head with a chip, and they can just go, hey, Google, answer this. They're going to adopt it. They're going to put it right into their body, and we'll be like walking cyborgs. And I know it sounds like Terminator, futuristic sci-fi stuff, but I guarantee the way people adopt new cell phones and Fitbits and everything else, giving your health information to entities that maybe you don't know who's looking at your health information, be careful. That's all I'm saying. You have a choice. It doesn't feel like it, right? Because we're under that pressure in our society. Everybody's got to keep up. But no, you can actually set small limits. I will give you some at the end of this to just sort of shape your life to how you want to use your technology. Be more aware of it, okay? Awareness is the key to change in all psychotherapy. We try to bring these unconscious behaviors and actions and thoughts and feelings from your subconscious to your cortex. And you, just by listening to this today, you'll leave here in the next few hours tomorrow and you will remember and see somebody and it will click because you brought it upstairs. That's what we want to do, bring it to your awareness, okay? All right, so I want to talk about some of the damages to us as individuals that's happening from social media and from technology and cell phones. and then also mostly to our children. It's really frightening, the generation we are raising on technology. It doesn't look good at this point. Let's just put it that way. But let me go back a little bit. I had a bad habit in my past of liking to drive enthusiastically, and I have spent my fair share in traffic school. And I remember they used to show this video, Walt Disney video with Goofy. And Goofy was in his car going to work, and he was all sped up, and he was all mad at the world, and he's all gets to work, and he's overworked, and the phone's going off and all. And this was the 50s. And they're having this video about how technology and how sped up we are and the stress we're under, the cortisol response it creates in your body, which leads to inflammation, which leads to damaged cells, which leads to dying early, dementia, diabetes, heart attacks, strokes, high cholesterol. All that is combined and connected to your environment, right? So I remember seeing that and kind of laughing at the cartoon, not realizing that 20, 30 years later, we were about to go to a new level of being too plugged in, right? So we know for a fact the levels of depression and anxiety in the United States alone, but this is a worldwide effect, have gone through the roof since the advent of 2013. I've heard the experts peg it at. That's when Facebook and all these other social media connection sites started to really get adopted by the population on a mass level. Okay, and it was that opt-in, like if you're not in, you're out. You got to be part of the club. And so what is it that I'm looking at other people's lives that's making me depressed or making me feel anxious? And what they have found out through a lot of studies now is that you're not looking at their real life. You're looking at some fabrication. I saw a statistic that the average teenager will take 200 photos of themselves, pick the one that's appropriate, and Photoshop it. Dress it all up so it doesn't even look like them in real life before they post it. And particularly for our teenage girls, that image perfection is hurting them on a deep, deep level. Depression and anxiety is almost a guarantee. You're trying to live through someone else's false representation of their life. There's the not keeping up feeling, or I'm not good enough, or look at them, they're having a great time on vacation and I'm sitting here at work, and jealousy, and somehow I'm not enough and I don't have that self-worth. And it's double and triple for our children because their brains have not formed yet, okay? Those teenage years of your brain learning how to operate in this world, things like delaying gratification, patience, tolerance of differences of opinion, all that stuff is so vital for them to learn. But if they're in that false world, it's skewed. They never get to be in the real reality to experience and grow through those experiences to develop their brain. Okay, it's almost like they're watching a movie of life when they're looking at everybody else's pages. I had a patient in my group today who said that, yo, you're so right. I was on Facebook yesterday. I don't even remember what I was looking at, but I spent an hour scrolling it, just scrolling. And by the way, you get dopamine when you scroll. All that's connected, the scrolls, the swipes, the button clicks, all that. You get a little bit of juice, a little bit of that dope to the brain. So the Surgeon General has tried to warn us about what's happening. And I wanted to read you this quote that I found today, which is so interesting, because I think it applies. If you're a parent, what do you do? And where are we at with all this, right? Because we suspect this isn't good, that we're handing a tablet to our 2-year-old. But if you don't, they cry, right? What are you going to do? So this is the Surgeon General from 2023, Vivek Murthy. The most common question parents ask me is, social media safe for my kids? The answer is that we actually don't have enough evidence to say it's safe. And in fact, there is growing evidence that social media use is associated with great serious harm to young people's mental health. Children are exposed to harmful content on social media, ranging from violent and sexual content to bullying and harassment. And for too many children, social media use is compromising their sleep, their valuable in-person time with family and friends, and we are actually in the middle of a national youth mental health crisis. And I am concerned that social media is an important driver of that crisis, and one that we must urgently address. Now, you might be asking, well, how does it affect my kids? This is what has been documented. I had to make a list because there was no way I was going to remember all this. Body dissatisfaction, disordered eating behaviors, social comparison, low self-esteem, Depression and anxiety, I mentioned. Poor sleep quality, reduced sleep duration, sleep difficulties. And check out these statistics. 46% of adolescents aged 15 to 17 say that social media makes them feel worse about their image. 46% of 13 to 17-year-olds say it makes them feel worse. And yet they still watch it, don't they? Why? Maybe addicted? I don't know. And check out this quote that I found. It's on the other side. 1/3 of girls, 11 to 15, 1/3 say that they feel addicted to social media. They know it. They can feel it. They can't put it down. And once you get on some of these videos on YouTube and really start watching the report of some of these kids talking about how they feel if they're not Instagramming all day long, if they're not connecting through other apps, they just feel like they're not alive. They feel like they're not part of the group, right? And they will actually say the most profound comment that I've heard, which is, my media life and presence is more important to me than what I represent in real life. That's what they're saying. That's how important it's grown to be a priority. So if you have children, and I know how difficult this is to do with them, just talk to them. See if you can air this out. Bring some of this information to them. Say, look, I'm concerned. Don't let the technology control you. You're under a lot of pressure from your peers that you've got to participate. But you know what? It's also cool to be the one that rebels and says, I'm not going to fully participate. Enough. I'm going to put it down. But what are we doing to our children if we're making them addicted to a screen? And this leads into TV. It leads into gaming addiction. Gaming addiction has now been adopted by the American Psychiatric Association as a provable, diagnosable, payable mental illness. Insurance has to pay for it. And guess what's coming next? Screen addiction. It's in the pipeline. It's coming next. It's probably going to be out in the next year or two. You're going to see this. So on top of all that, the new Surgeon General this year, 2024, guess what they've done? They have proposed warning labels to highlight the potential dangers of these platforms, especially that they pose to teenagers' mental health. Warning labels like on cigarettes. So that kind of pegs for me where we are in our progression of understanding the damage being done. For the longest time, cigarettes were legal and fine, and they were telling pregnant women to smoke to calm their stomach when they were nauseated in early pregnancy. It's good for the baby. Seriously. As the doctor's smoking, taking her heartbeat. And then they were forced, because the evidence showed the damage. They were forced to have to put labels. That's where we're at with this now. We're just beginning to understand the science. It only came out early in 2013. We've had the pandemic, it got worse, and now the science is coming out because it takes time to do that work, and now we're getting to the point of warning labels. So when might it be banned? When might we decide, screw this shit? Because I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to really ask yourself this question. If a stranger or a company or a corporation harmed your child in this manner, made them feel bad about themselves, hurt them, bullied them, harassed them, sexually abused them, exposed them to material that was inappropriate to minors, any of the above, would you not be furious? Why are we not furious? I'm just asking the question. You can reflect for yourself. And how is this affecting you and me? We're not outside the bubble. We are in the fishbowl with everybody else. So again, don't beat yourself up. That is not that never works in recovery. Recovery is an invitation to investigate. Uncover, discover, discard. Uncover, discover, discard. So I can uncover what's going on, discover, oh wow, I'm caught up. I need to change this, and then I can discard the behavior that I'm doing that's objectionable. It's beautiful, and it's a way to progress. And I promise you, when you take back your power with technology, you will feel much better about yourself. It's really odd. I hear people report that they don't feel this constant pressure on them. One of my best sponsees, I loved him so much because we both had an inordinate adoration for David Byrne from the Talking Heads. We got his quirkiness and his weirdness. And he's a true artist. He's an oddball. But we're in the big suit, if you know what I'm talking about. And my buddy calls me up one day and he goes, Christopher. I said, what? He says, what's going on? I said, what do you mean what's going on? What's up? What are you talking about? He goes, I don't know, man. I feel weird. I said, you do? Are you high? No, I'm not drunk. What's going on? What is this strange pressure I feel if anybody leaves me a voicemail, a text, or an email? I feel like the clock is ticking, that I have to get back to in a certain amount of time. I said, yeah, I know what you mean. That's really odd. Let's look at that. What is that strange pressure, and why am I allowing myself to be pulled into it? Why don't I wait? That can be answered tomorrow. Oh my God, they won't like me. They will think I didn't get it. And let them think that. Why do I have to control that? Why do I feel panicky? Because, oh, this company holds my paycheck. I better respond immediately. Or it's the government. No, I have the power to wait a day, a night especially. God forbid you're getting ready to go to bed and you made the mistake of checking your email and you're letting that thing stir you up to ruin your sleep that night because I got to respond. And many of you are living that way. I know it. Anybody in business, statistically, 200 times a day they check their email. 200 times a day going, blah, 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 blah. What's that? You want me to do it again? Blah, 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 blah. Gotta have a sense of humor about all this crap. Again, you'll see it in other people more than yourself. Let's talk about some solutions, all right? I just want you to consider how this has changed your life and contributing to your less than ideal quality of life. It is a tool. It should not be influencing us to this degree, okay? And what do they call them? Influencers. Duh. All right, and you think you're immune. These guys are making billions of dollars being influencers, and you think you're immune to their influencing. So I want to invite you today. The main tool I want to talk about was finding time and space in your life for quiet. Quiet is a very almost endangered species, but undervalued thing in our society today. It's difficult to find quiet in your own backyard without hearing a cop car, as Dan told me the other night, and the cops were chasing somebody, or a plane going past, or a lawnmower going. You know, some of which a lawnmower in a suburban area might be kind of consoling, you know, normal sound, but where's the quiet? Where's the absolute dead silence? I say endangered species because I've heard speakers talk about if you go to a store, they're pumping music. If you go in an elevator, they got to pump freaking music. If you go to a doctor's office, you got to have the TV on. And what do they always have on at the doctor's office? News or talk shows, news or talk shows, news or talk shows. And I'm like, what are y'all talking about? Oh, something negative. Thank you. So now I'm worried about my doctor's appointment. Now you're going to give me some negative shit to worry about while I'm waiting. Great. There is a way to combat that. You have these little things called earbuds. And I really do think opting for music rather than blah, 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 much better option. Or if you like, turn on some white noise, green noise, pink noise, gray noise, and just as you go through the grocery store. And you don't have to listen to clean up on our fire, please. So where's my quiet? Why do I feel like I have to come home and immediately turn on one of my technological devices? You know, just switch on the TV, turn on the music, fire up the computer, turn on a YouTube video. You know, we all do it, and there's nothing wrong with using it, right? If I am using technology tonight for entertainment, fine, watch a show, not a problem. You've decided you want to spend your time that way. If I want to listen to a YouTube video on a spiritual topic while I'm doing my laundry, great, nothing wrong with that either. But occasionally, how hard is it for us to just turn off everything and just be quiet for a minute? Let silence be in the house. I know my friend Dan loves to retreat to his cabin, and that's about the only place he probably finds real dead silence. And when you get in that state, there's two things that happen. One is you connect with your innermost self with the earth, because the earth has a rhythm of its own. When we were on retreat recently, and I asked the guys, because I pulled away from the group, I knew I was going to spend some time with the forest. And I was going to do a walking meditation where I just slowly take one step and I stop and I listen and I observe. Any movement, any sounds, the wind, the feel of the air. And then you stop, take another step. And I was doing it for a while, and I'd look over my shoulder to see if they're coming. And when they came, I was like, oh, I got to go this way. And I tried to avoid any contact, but I was looking for that moment of connection. And when you get away from everything, and Dan will talk about this, I'm certain, you get this really deep connection with a higher power, a force, the energy of the earth. And everybody has experienced this at one time in your life, even if it was at the ocean, it was just the beach. It's just a really grounding, peaceful, rejuvenating experience. So there's one thing you get. The other thing they talk about is you will have no space in your life for God or for a higher power or to hear any kind of influence, to use the word, or suggestions from your intuition if there's noise going on all the time. If the ego is chattering, the TV is chattering, the kids are yelling, and there's too much going on, there's no space or room for God. And before we do a fifth step, our good friend Scott Lee from Nashville used to talk about preparing the space and that God's a gentleman. He won't go where he's not asked. So we try to ask our higher power to join us, and we prepare the space to welcome him into the space instead of doing the freaking fifth step at a coffee shop. If that was done by you, by your sponsor, you got gypped. We'll talk about that in another day. It's a sacred experience when I'm sharing my full story with someone. That should be in a safe environment like Dan's cabin. So if you don't have that quiet, you're probably rolling through with greater anxiety and less connection because you don't have any space or room in your life for a higher power. You aren't listening. That is actually the main goal of meditation. When we were talking about that the other week, is I've got to take a moment to just shut up and listen. Just be present for my life. Because you know what happens is you get so sped up, you're going to miss the entire experience. It'll roll by 10 years, 20 years. Well, what happened? I don't know. It's a blur. And you weren't present for some of your greatest experiences because you were worried about capturing it on your cell phone or checking the news or whatever else. They got their hooks in you. And that's kind of what they are. They're hooks. Yank you in. Hey, pay attention to me. Okay? So that's the first thing. Try to find some time and space for more quiet in our lives. Now, I'm going to help you with this. I want to suggest that when you go visit a friend over coffee or at their home, here's a challenge. Leave your cell phone in the car. How many people will go out to eat with someone and you're talking and having a great conversation and their phone either dings or they feel compulsory behavior, they've got to pick it up and look at it, and they've abandoned you at the table. Like literally you're just sitting there, okay, what do? I can eat my food, wait for you, what are we doing? And you know what happens at that point? I feel compelled to pick up mine. And now we got a whole family at the table at the restaurant. They're all on their cell phone and nobody's being present for dinner. And I know how hard that is with a family. Trust me, pulling that phone out of their hands is like pulling a tooth out. But just look at that. Like I said, when your friend does that, challenge them. Say, hey man, I thought we were here together. Is something so urgent you had to check that? If it is, I respect that. But really, was it? Or was it just telling you the NBA game on Thursday is going to be at 7 o'clock and you already know that? Which is most of my freaking stupid notifications, the ones I let through about weather and stuff. I already know what the weather is going to be. I'm about ready to turn that one off. It's taking you out of your life experience, and it's really disrespectful to your friend or your family or the person you love. Can you imagine? Can you imagine somebody having great sex and in the middle of orgasms going, hold on a second. I got to notice. It's literally that sick. And when that happens, observe how you feel, how your friend just basically jumped out of the room and has abandoned you. And you're sitting there alone going in the restaurant looking at other people. I guess I'm not worth talking to. It's really odd. Also notice how quickly if the person steps out to go to the bathroom or whatever, you have to pick up your phone because you feel uncomfortable sitting there alone, being in your own little space. Here's a study that was done that's mind-blowing. People were allowed to sit in a room for 5 minutes alone, and they had an option. You can either sit alone and just be with your thoughts, and we'll give you a reward, or you can press this little button, which will give you an electric shock to distract yourself. And the electric shock was not extremely painful, but it was painful enough. And the majority of people could not sit still, and they just ended up pressing the shock to give themselves some kind of stimulation. They didn't have their cell phones with them. They didn't have anything to look at. So they were just like, I couldn't even spend 5 minutes with myself. Odd, isn't it? And again, this has only happened to us in the last 20 to 30 years, folks. You know the way we used to be? Let's back up a little bit. Paleolithic era. Remember, you've seen the lions on the savannah after they've had a kill? You know what they do? They just lay down and look at the scenery. They might sleep, but they're just chilling. And they were present for their life. They are enjoying the world. They're not always doing something. In fact, lions rest most of the day till they have to go hunt. And then just like a cat, cats sleep most of the day. They plant themselves and they just are being. They're not doing. They're human beings. They're doing, right? They're not human beings, but we are. So just question yourself on that. Why is this thing compelling me? I got to pull it out of my pocket and put it in your pocket. Put it in your purse. Stop having it out on the table. That's the biggest clue that you're going to look at it. And again, like I said, leave it in the car. What a concept. I haven't seen my friend in 10 years. I want to have dinner with you. Chuck it. This thing's more important than your friend? Again, if you have children, you're going to say, well, what if something happens? Well, I don't know. How about making arrangements with your partner that I'm going to dinner with my friend? If something happens, you're the point man. You're on point. Take care of it. You can do that for yourself. I want out for a day or for a minute, please. And here's my favorite one of all. And I've been doing this since the beginning of my sobriety. And it has been the best tool I ever picked up. I don't even know where I learned this. I really can't remember where I got this. Maybe I found out for myself. And that is to take that one day a week to do what I call me time. We talked about this in the Passion episode, but we did not talk about turning off the cell phones maybe so much and really opting out of the matrix for a day. I take Sundays because it's the one day where there's not much going on. Most people are off, right? We do have that 24-hour society, but it's interesting how at night, middle of night, even though people are working, but also at the middle of the night, but also on Sundays, it does seem a little bit slower and sometimes on holidays. Why don't you take a day to turn this off and just unplug it? Or take 6 hours to do that for yourself. And during that 6 hours, what I do is I have no schedule. I don't want to be on the clock. I don't want to be going, oh shit, I have to be somewhere at 3 o'clock. I go at the pace of that day, and it's the most beautiful, fun, rejuvenating, relaxing experience so that when I go back to work on Monday, I don't feel pissed off about going back to work on Monday. I really don't, because I had a day off. I wasn't doing too much shit over my weekend. So let's say I wake up at 10 or 11, right? Because I sleep in on the weekends, and so I say 10, 11 to maybe 5, because 5 I got to come out and maybe start preparing, get the house clean a little bit, and do some chores and prepare for the next days. But I've got 6 or 7 good hours there of me just puttering, is what I call it. And I just putter, oh, maybe we'll do this. Let's get into this. Oh, what's this over here? Let's do this here. And you just exist. Now, you don't have to stay at home. You can go out and go to a coffee shop, go to the park, for God's sakes, take a walk. But the idea is do it without this. I try really hard not to look at my cell phone during that period. Not always easy, because out of habit, I will glance at it. Try not to engage. I usually don't engage unless it's an emergency. I tell my sponsees, if it's an emergency, I'll get back to you. But otherwise, I'm taking that day, bro. Sunday's my day, my day, my day. I hope you will learn from me. I hope you will do this. I try to teach this to every one of my sponsees. Some of them won't do it. I'm too busy. I have kids. Bullshit. You can always make time for yourself if you will make time for yourself. You know what we make time for ourselves doing? Watching Netflix, watching, bullshit games or whatever, wasting time, looking at social media. There's plenty of time for yourself. You just got to get organized about it. Try it. One day a week, I'm going to unplug from the matrix. I'm disconnected. Maybe even turn it off so you're not totally connected. And just be. Float. Do a little writing. Draw. Play some music. Don't matter what you do. Do a puzzle. Play a game with your kids. Play with your cat. Doesn't matter what you do. It's the idea I'm not on the clock. I am completely unclocked from my life. And it's a beautiful fucking, I can't even tell you, it's better than drugs in some way. Because, drugs amp you up. And this is more of a relaxed flow that you're just like, I'm just having a great day, man. Because I'm not worried about shit. And one last tool I'll give you too is that big tool of one day at a time. My God, we'll probably have a whole episode on that because that is an art form and it will keep you one day at a time, one moment at a time. Like with this, the only reason I had this, that was that stupid quote. So I'm going to put it back in my damn pocket. How about that? And forget about it. And I want to be in one moment. I want to be with my friend Dan to hear his thoughts now. And, not easy, but recovery is a fun journey. It's exciting. It's an adventure. And if you go on it for yourself, you'll find it might be the best time in your life to really learn about yourself and how your life has been hijacked by so many forces, and technology being one of the top ones. So thank you for being with us. We really appreciate you being here. And send your questions. We want to address if you have any angle on this because it's such a wide topic. no way we could cover it all in the podcast. So bring it to us. What's hard for you? What do I find hard doing? Why is this got claws in me? Whatever it is. And I'll try to help you with it. So my friend Dan is an interesting guy. I'll just start us off here that he really stays unplugged from the news, and he doesn't get caught up in worldly events, and I admire that greatly. But he is one of the most plugged in dudes I know about responding, which is great because he's there for response. He's like, you know what, and he's tuned into the group and he knows what's going on. But I know he takes time for himself when he goes to the cabin and he sits up in his tree stand and he just is with nature. So, thoughts? What do you think from your experience?
So I'll just start off with the hunting thing. I have loved to hunt all my life, but really not like ever having some desire really to kill anything. And I have slowly, because of recovery, began to understand that it's really that solitude and that connection to Mother Nature, that connection to the earth. That's really what I'm doing. I was using hunting, and I still do. I still just use hunting as a tool to do it. Nobody really questions, and I don't suppose they would. I thought, well, you could just go hiking. You could just go sit in the woods. You could just go do whatever you want to do and don't put a label on it. But I like to hunt, and I use that for that. And it was really an eye-opening thing, was to come to that understanding of why I actually love to hunt so much. So I'm going to go back and talk about some of the stuff, this immediate response stuff, about like when the phone rings or the text beep goes off, and I still have to fight it. And I actually try to take a time, I want to be responsive, but I don't have to be right now responsive. Even if I say, okay, in a couple minutes even, my buddy can wait a few minutes, can wait a little bit to get his answer or whatever's going on. And clients, that kind of jerks on that security thing where I'm a little bit at its beck and call more than a lot of things, and I'll feel like it, but I've learned to do it, and I've changed my voicemails. I do not answer the telephone anymore unless I know who's calling me. It's one of my friends that's calling me. I don't answer it. I tell them that, and my voicemail says, I get too many junk calls today. If you need me, please leave me a voicemail and I will get back to you. And then I can get back to them on my time instead of being, because that is one of the, it's the pendulum thing we talked about in the past about how it can be good and bad, and there's some middle ground in there with this stuff, right? I know that probably as a whole, I probably am tipping over into the more techie kind of thing. One thing I think about is, and you were talking about it, and that was my second item I had on here, was the quietness. Even when I'm at Fargo anymore, I'm rarely quiet. I usually am listening to a book. Now, on the one side, that's not such a bad thing, right? But on the other side, I'm not getting doses of that quiet in my life on a regular basis. And what I wrote down wasn't really, it was more a note to me than it was a comment to talk about. But it says, I need more quiet.
Which is wonderful. And I live in the city.
Awareness.
I live in the city, so and my windows and stuff are pretty good soundproof. But I just like putting on my gray noise.
Yep.
And it just envelops me where it's just I'm in a bubble. That's still a form of quiet, in my opinion.
Yep. When I'm down there, I have one earbud in. I don't want to silence myself from what I'm doing. I've just got a guy I'm listening to a book in one ear, and I hear stuff in all the time. I was down there the other day and heard an owl hooting, and mute that and listen to the owl for a little bit. And then when the owl went off, or you sometimes can call them in with my little hand call, and I usually will play with that, see if I can get them come closer. But anyway, that I'm still attached to nature, and I'm still out there, but I'm also it's 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and I kind of want to look at that a little bit. The other night when I was coming home from, and the timing on these things is all goofy, but I just took a 5-day trip on my own and went out to Gettysburg National Military Park is what they actually call it, and visited that. And I got called there. I mean, something in my heart got pulled there. And I was just listening to a guy talking about it. He said, people get pulled here. Mm. And I was like, oh. he was talking about, they just reopened Little Round Top, and I want to go back. And I might go back in a couple of days, but that's not my point. My point is I stopped and I ate well while I was there. I was treating myself. I was eating $50 dinners and stuff. And I walked in this restaurant after whitewater rafting in Charleston, West Virginia, and it looked like it was a little bit like I was afraid I was maybe underdressed at first, but then, because when you come out of sunlight and you first come in, all I saw was like people dressed up and sitting at dinner tables together as couples and that. But I happened to sit down. I got comfortable. I don't really give a shit, after a minute. And I sat down, but there's out of my periphery over here is a couple that just came in and sat down. And they're both dressed up real nice. She's all dressed up and made up like, floor length kind of summer dress. He's dressed pretty decent too, you can tell they stepped it up a little bit for this night out. And out of the corner of my eye, I'm here by myself, and I'm looking at my phone. I'm watching people in the restaurant, but I'm watching over there, and this dude had his phone up in front of him, almost like between the time they ordered and the food came. He had his phone, and I could see her, and she almost had like your particular position right there. She was kind of just watching him, and he was just totally engrossed. And she was sitting there by herself, and I could see the pain in her too, man. Dude. You could feel the pain in her from sitting there. I mean, and she's looking at him like, what the am I doing with you?
Yeah, right. You're not going to have her for long if you do that shit, right?
It was just a classic example right there. When the food came, he set it down, but he was still reaching with it on the other hand and everything. Once in a while I'd seen, and he would want to show her something, and I could see that like that's the last thing she's, you could almost see. And it's like, are you even paying attention to your girl there at all? I mean, she's basically telling you, I don't want to look at your goddamn phone, but he was oblivious to it.
So this is kind of what we're suggesting, and I don't think maybe she would have felt comfortable doing this, but she was not happy, right? You could tell she had a resentment about this, right? Why not say something?
They were not going to have a good rest of the evening.
Why not say something? Why not say, hey, you know what? We're out to dinner. Can we just have dinner together? Yep. And you can do it in a nice way.
You could.
Or you can say, hey, fuck it. I'm important, Otherwise, I'm walking out, and you can have dinner alone. Yeah. And that's setting a boundary.
Do you want some later on tonight or not?
That is recovery. That is setting a boundary when we step up for ourselves. Absolutely. That is what it's all about. But who knows? I hate to put projections. I don't mean to be a stereotypical. Maybe he holds the purse strings, and she didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah, there could be a lot of that.
Maybe it's business that he has to do on the phone or something, I don't know. But again, it's a weird sickness.
Back on. And it made me giggle too, because cell phones do not get turned off. I mean, it's a rare person, but here's something I noticed too, like with older people, like Dad, he can't, when you're not using something, you turn it off. That's what you do, right? It's like, well, when you walk out of the room, you turn the lights off, and when you're not using this something, and I have a number of elderly clients that I go to their houses, and they'll say, I usually like to text them on my way there, and I won't get any response or anything, and they'll know that's me doing that too. And then I get there and they go, oh, I haven't turned my phone on yet today. And I don't know what word I'm amused by that oh, you haven't turned your phone on yet today, huh?
See, but they were at an age where their patterns were already established when phones were introduced. And the younger you are, which is why it's hurting our kids so badly, their brains have adapted to this as normal because that's all they've known since they were born. And that's really the heavy danger being done to the youth is they just don't know any difference. Yep. They've never experienced not having these things in their life.
Yeah, and I visualize. I remember, when you had little kids and they were in the back seat and you were going to be in the car for a little while. It was as natural as can be, man. And I mean, my mind still to this day, it's like I turned around and I handed them a crack pipe. Here, amuse yourself for a little bit. Because both of them now, they're fully engrossed into screen stuff. And my son will shut down like a robot if he doesn't have stimulus. He will just... The minute he doesn't have stimulus, he will fall asleep. I mean, at some level, I'm a little impressed by his ability just to fall asleep, which I don't have any problem doing that either, but it is a little impressive. It's like, man, if you don't poke you every couple of seconds, you're out. And I know it's just this overstimulus, this constant stimulation that kids of their generation and younger are getting. It's too much. We're not designed for that.
And see, the media companies have to keep up with that to engage their customers. So I always laugh. If you go to any movie theater and they show previews, notice if you don't feel beat up by the time the previews are done, where they're like, come into a theater, you. And it's all these freaking sound effects, all this heavy music. I mean, it could be a Goldilocks tale. It could be an Alice in Wonderland, but they're going to bend it into this negative, whoa, it's this weird. And, just click on YouTube right now and watch a trailer for a movie coming out this summer. Unbelievable amount of impact, quick cuts, stimulation, loud voice, loud noises. Hell, the movie theaters are so loud anymore, you need to take earplugs. And, but what's this doing to them that they have to have constant stimulation? Because life is not like that. Life is the Serengeti, laying on the plains. Life is at your cabin. And, now, does he feel that need to be as plugged in when he's out of the cabin, or do you see a change in his behavior when he goes there?
That's yet to be determined. I do see pieces of him that unplug and want to unplug on purpose. But, if you don't give him, if he's not doing something, he's going to be asleep in a second. Whether it's in that chair or we're out walking, we can do things and he's fine and that kind of thing. But if you sit him still with no, and, here's the other thing, Chris, just because you take your phone off, just because we don't have cell service down there, don't mean guys can't do just about everything they want to do on their telephone. Download stuff, have games, have some kind of stimulus that if at your beck and call, even when you're not having a cell signal. It used to be that, and maybe that's me too, partly of the generation change of thinking that once you didn't have cell service, your phone wasn't worth. It was a brick after that. But
they're bringing their own hotspot or something.
And I do it too. I'm on that. I know I'm in the same water as they are, and like you said, I'm as plugged in as any dude can be, man. And
which is great. That's what we want to have happen today. We want our friends out there to just recognize that. Don't discard this experience of learning. Just take a moment to step back and reevaluate, and then you can make little changes, whatever you want to do. If you don't want to make any changes, fine. There's no judgment. But I think if you make little changes, you'll feel more empowered. I do. I feel more empowered every time I leave my phone in the other room when I'm writing. My writing is a sacred thing, and the phone does not interfere with that. Period. End of story. And
I have friends
done.
I've had friends that leave their phones behind in places. We go in a restaurant and you say something, and my phone's in the car. In meetings. Go to meetings and their phone's in the car.
People go to AA meetings or whatever to save their life, and they're on their phone the entire meeting.
I watched a guy behind you the other night that sat up there at one of his tables with his phone on the table
the whole time.
And I saw him. He was never even at the meeting, man.
He is there to get his paper signed.
He's actually a dude that's got 12, 13 years of sobriety.
Oh, even worse. He is dry as milk toast. Stay away from that dude. He's going to burn you. He's going to infect you with some slime, make you feel horrible about the world because he's miserable, restless, discontent.
But I do try to make sure, I do keep an awareness, and I do try to know why I'm using it, and it's not using me. I don't do much. I don't do any real social media scrolling, death scrolling kind of stuff. Like you had said, I'm doing it to stay in touch with my friends, my community, and for work.
Now, again, to be flexible about this, doom scrolling is a term that came up during the pandemic where people were just reading negative story after negative story, looking for the worst one to sort of validate, I feel so down, I feel so depressed, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with exercising that part of you every now and then. It's kind of like when we go to a violent movie. And I know some people say, violence is bad. I don't agree with that. We're primitive creatures. We have to get that out. That's why we go to football games. That's why we go hunting. It's about that part of our spirit that has to be exercised. So if you're doing that for a short time, just to say, you know what, I have this dark side. I'm feeling down today. I'm just going to get into some shit. But you're not letting it dominate your whole day or your week or your month or your year. That's the point, is I'm going to choose when I do it. It is my servant. Please blaze that into your consciousness today.
That's where you opened it up. It's serving you. You're not serving it.
And that's what we're doing here. These tools, the microphone, the camera, they're not my life. It's a tool like this water jug. It serves me as a purpose, and treat it as such. Disregard it as such. Otherwise, it's not that important. Anything else come to mind?
No, that's about all the notes I got here, man.
So talk to your friends. Start a conversation, especially if you have a friend that you think is really deep in and you'd like to help them. Don't be a do-gooder or try to tell them what to do. But just say, hey, man, I saw this podcast. It was pretty cool. I can send you the link. That's easy enough. And if you want to talk about it, love to talk about it sometime, because I'm looking at my own behaviors. And always keep it on you. Whenever you're trying to help someone else, I've tried really hard to teach my sponsees this, and I had one of them feed this back to me in aftercare today when she said, I've learned I don't come at people you anymore. I always say, this is my experience. This is what happened to me. And this is with her sister. And that's hard to do when you have a family member that's in early recovery and you really want them to make it. So again, if you share this with anybody or anything, or the podcast, just say, hey, this really helped me. You want me to send you a link? And that's always better than you need to listen to this. So now we will shift gears into our Q&A period, the questions and answers. And we have a couple of great questions today. Again, if you would like to be on the podcast through your question anonymously, we will not identify you. Send it to im12recovery@gmail.com, im12recovery@gmail. And I swear to Lord, it's the best thing we have in this program to be able to get other people's take on things. Why is it so valuable? They are not close to the fire of my experience, so they can see the bigger picture. I can do this for Dan. Dan can do this for me. I am too caught up in my emotions. I can't see the forest for the trees. But when I get this guy who comes in and says, well, you might look at it this way because I see this angle. And it's like, well, how'd you see that? Because I'm not right on top of it. You can't see this when it's right on top of you. And that's the way we are with our problems. So send your questions. We will help you. Objective experience, strength, and hope. All right. Let's get in the first one. I heard that you mentioned there was one word. If you could change, you would change it in the 12 steps. Uh-oh, changing the formula. Rebel. I heard you mention if there's one word you could change in the 12 steps, it would be the word moral. Could you please expound upon this? And thank you so much. What a great question. I love it. So we're going through the steps, and we got to take it in. I think it's important to take everything in perspective of history and context. So the 12 steps were written in the 30s. It has a little bit of archaic language. It was written by people who had Judeo-Christian backgrounds, and that's all they knew. So they're using terms that they were familiar with, might not apply to everybody, right? Steps are so good, you could actually change it a little bit in its wording and still do the work and still get the same results. It's really, really interesting how you can do different aspects and still get a lot of the same results. Basic things like doing inventory and doing amends, you can't skirt around. Those have to be done. But otherwise, just the wording, if you don't like a word or something, just ignore it. But here's what I have found as a sponsor of over 40 years of recovery, is that the word moral inventory, and that happens in step 4. We get to step 4 and it says, all right, we're now going to write down what bothers you, what has happened in your life, your traumas, your hurts, your wounds, what's going on. They call them resentments, but it's bigger than that. And it's a documentation of everything that you're just carrying in your trash can, and it's bothering you, it's hurting you now, and we need to find a way to get you free of it. So the word moral, I think Bill was writing from that aspect of an alcoholic addict, okay? We have this long history with addicts and alcoholics where there's always this negative bent of judgment. And I caught one of my nursing students. Occasionally we get nursing students in to observe the podcast, to observe the group that we do. Right? It's good for their training to be exposed to mental health patients because they're going to have them in whatever branch of nursing they end up in at some point. And so she was really good at picking my head apart about questions about addiction, but she asked one question that had this little bent to it that felt a little bit like, and she even mentioned Nancy Reagan, but it had a little bit of that Nancy Reagan, just say no. And I was like, whoa. Just understand, man, these people are not choosing to be dicks. They're not choosing to be assholes. You need to understand that. This is if they could do better, they would, but their brain has been hijacked, and I explained all that to them. But since that negative connotation is there, and since we do such reprehensible things when we're using, I think Bill was coming at it from a little bit of a religious bent, even though he was not a religious guy. But the Oxford group was the basis of our program, which was a religious organization. So he's coming at it from that get right with God. We got to get right with God. We got to do a moral inventory. You done wrong. It's good or bad. And it's right or wrong. And I disagree with that 100%, and I think that's a terrible approach to doing your own inventory. If you go into an inventory like, oh, great, 2 things. A, they're going to beat up on me, and I'm used to that for my family. Came from an abusive family. Used to that for my church. My church abused me. Okay, great. Abuse me some more. I'm a terrible person. I do these awful things. And any guy that approaches their 4-step that way, they don't finish it. They don't get healing. Or then we get these people that are particularly sick by the people that were sick that hurt them. And they're like, oh, great, another chance to abuse myself. I'm so terrible. I'm so horrible. I need to be moral now. I need to be a saint. And it sets a wrong tone. So when we started our groups, TSSR, 12-Step Spiritual Recovery, 12stepspiritualrecovery.com, for meetings for everybody to come learn about the steps, we just alter that one step for a second to call it objective. Now, I've gone back in the new book and switched it back to the words. I address it as part of the chapter. But to take a fearless and thorough objective inventory of ourselves. Now, what does that mean? That means when I'm doing my work, I'm not going to sit there and beat myself with my past. That serves no purpose. We are taught in the 4-step, the most effective method is to make your lists like you're making a grocery list. So you put eggs, butter, bread, and you just keep moving. You don't sit there and dwell on any one thing. And when a person stops and does that during the 4-step process, they lose momentum. They start into the self-judgment. Guilt and shame come soon after that, and they relapse, and they do not get their 4-step done. I've seen this 1,000, 100 million freaking times. And literally, you should be writing this like a phone book. This is a factual documentation of what happened in my life. We're not going to relive it, which is the definition of resentment. Relive, refeel something. Don't want to do any of that. And when you get it done, put it away in the drawer. Do not look at it again. Do an hour session, put it away. Do an hour session, put it away, and treat yourself to a reward. We will do an entire podcast on the 12 steps and methodologies we've learned over decades, since the 1937 when the book was published, that work better than the way they used to do it. So this moral bent, I think, puts people at a disadvantage. It handicaps them before they get started. And we are not trying to be saints. This is spelled out clearly. Bill Wilson wrote How It Works. They read it at every meeting all over the world. We are not saints. And then he goes on and says, what's the point? The point is, we are willing. My disease made me willing to listen, learn new things, try new things. We are willing to grow. Oh, I'm actually willing to grow and expand, learn new things, and become a better person. I'm willing to grow along these spiritual lines. That's the point, to make progress, not to be perfect, not to be a saint. And this is where people will come in and say AA is a religious program because they get confused with words like moral and shit. I say, it's just me. Leave it in the church. Leave it in the church. Fine. You guys can have it. See what you do with it. I don't see my church doing much with that guilt and shame. It does not make people feel more comfortable to approach their higher power and have a real connection with it. Having fear of God is not a way to have a relationship with the loving, giving, beautiful, graceful, merciful force that gave you this life and all the abundance that we have at our fingertips. But man has mismanaged it. There's actually enough food on the planet for everybody. There's enough clean water, and we could make it for everybody. We don't because of greed and self-centeredness. So, yeah, you can tell this is kind of a hot button for me, but I've just seen too many people fail on that. So if you would like, if you're a newcomer and you're going through your steps, feel free to change that word for yourself. It is not immoral. It is an objective listing, not to refeel, of what I've been through in my life and what I think my issues are that are contributing to my over cell phone use, overeating, gambling, drugging, whatever your thing is. There's a fuel. These are the fuel that's driving the bus, your traumas, okay? So, any thoughts on that, Dan, about the old moral word?
Beautiful, beautiful. I agree completely. You know, what is it, that old saying we say? We're not bad people trying to get good. We're sick people trying to get well, you know, and you know, to what level that sickness has got you. But it's funny how our brains can pick up little bitty things like that and run with them, you know, and this is not a morality issue. Dan was not an immoral dude or was or any of that. That had nothing to do with it. So I think, you know, and the same thing when you're actually the mechanics of the work and the actual step that word is used in has nothing to do with how moral or immoral I am. Now, maybe some people might want to lay that label at some things I've done and whatnot, but it certainly never helps yourself to approach it like that. And it's just a fact-finding, fact-facing mission. You know what it says in there? And we're looking for causes and conditions.
Objective.
And objective is a much better word for what we're doing when we're heading into a 4-step.
And I wasn't immoral as so much as I was conflicted and confused. Now, why was I conflicted and confused? Because I was doing things that go against my own values that I didn't even believe in because my brain was hijacked. Now, that is not a get out of jail free card.
Nope.
For any of y'all that think that, because we are going to do our amends later to make these things right. We're not skirting our responsibility that we screwed up.
Right.
But there is a reason. It's not an excuse. It's a reason. I asked somebody in my group today who had done something with their child that they were having a hard time not feeling guilt and shame about, of course. And I said, yeah, but if you're sober, is there a fiber or cell in your body that could hurt a hair on the hair of your head of your child? She said, of course not. I said, so how did that happen? Well, I was using, so there was another force at work, your disease. And so, this is a huge angle of why people don't recover, is because we're beating up the patient. We're not beating up the damn disease.
Yeah. And it has been. It's been made to where, you see the shady drunks, they're up to no good.
Or
drug addicts.
Drugs,
Yep. Any kind of that has always had that connotation put on it that they're bad. Something is, they're bad people. And of course, we don't help ourselves a whole lot with some of that, but that is not what's going on here.
Yeah, but I heard a speaker say one time, he said, you give your sainted, go to church twice a week grandmother who's never done anything wrong in her life enough whiskey, and she's going to get on the table and do some things she wouldn't normally do.
Yeah. And, when we made me think a minute ago when we were thinking about like how bad boy, you can't raise your kids like that. They don't know what they're doing.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Great point. In the next podcast, we're going to address how to help a family member or a friend who's suffering from addiction. And so that's where that little passion came out about we're beating up the patient, we're not beating up the disease. It doesn't work. I've never seen anybody get sober being sent to prison. Occasionally they were ready and they saw God and they were really scared, maybe. But mostly beating up addicts does not work to get them sober, or make them stay sober, I should say.
Yeah.
Great question. Really appreciate it. And keep them coming. We love to hear from you. All right, this one's a little bit more in-depth. It's from a big fan in capital letters. Thank you for that. In recovery, we learn a lot of tools. And in my experience, the longer I have been in recovery and working all 12 steps in my daily life, the better I have become at implementing these tools. Absolutely, like anything else, practice makes perfect. It's awesome. One in particular is the ability to deal with an emotional response to a situation head-on without stuffing it or letting it run rampant through the rest of my day or the rest of my week. I'm really familiar with that. It's very, very common for us. At times, I may have to compartmentalize it in the moment, but will generally deal with it that evening at a meeting or with my sponsor or a close friend. But I recently realized that in an earlier point, that in my earlier recovery, when I thought I was using my tools, I was actually over compartmentalizing and then getting to the point that there was no more room in the closet and it would all come flooding out in a disaster. Yes, that is what stuffing does. It waits to blow. How does one know when they are using these tools, their tools, or just setting aside and stuffing things without dealing with them or acknowledging them? Could the continued stuffing of needs, emotions, or anger be a result of missing a tool or missing something when I was working the steps? Sincerely, big fan. Love the podcast. Awesome. Thank you so much. We are happy to have you with us. We hope we get many more big fans as we go. We love big fans. So I'm going to bounce back to the trauma aspect and to this wiring we get inside of us with our patterns, because I've had a direct I've had direct experience with this response, trying to fight what was wired into me as a child in a dysfunctional family system, knowing what I know today. And trust me, I'm a freaking counselor. If you get a good counselor, they'll tell you, hey man, I'm still struggling. I'm still working on my stuff. I'm still learning. Those are the best ones, by the way. Because there is no healing. I'm healed. I'm through this. You're still going to be alive. You still got to be human. But I have so many times seen myself reacting not ideally inside. I've gotten much better on the outside. Like on the outside, nobody would even know that I'm bouncing off the walls or what's happening. It's not that I'm stuffing it, but I know that spewing it on someone else is not a spiritual thing to do. In the past, we would just take it out on whoever's close to us. If you're in my vicinity, you're getting the shit because I feel like shit. So that's one huge growth aspect that most people with some recovery have told will be able to say, yeah, I'm not throwing my crap on other people. Awesome. Then you're not creating bad karma. Nothing wrong with that. That's huge progress. But then when we stuff it and we don't act on our tools to set a boundary when we need to, or to speak up and speak my truth when I really should have said something, and then what do? We leave there and we spend 20, 30, the next day, next week, talking in our head what I should have said. Now, if I had just said this, and then they said that, and I would have said that, and I would have become, I'd have been champion. I'd have looked at the camera and go, win. It's just crazy how this stuff dominates us, right? But here's what's happening in that moment when we're analyzing what we should have. Don't ever should on thyself. You'll hear me say that a lot. We're critiquing ourselves. We're not being our own best friend. We're actually being critical, and we're actually fulfilling the role of the people that were around us that hurt us, and they're no longer here, but now we're doing that to ourselves by being semi-abusive to ourselves with our approach to these issues. So that's the angle I wanted to take on this when I first read this earlier. I'm really getting into this therapist online who talks about the newer tool. It's been around a while, but he called it newer, maybe to him, called compassionate inquiry. And he says when you're a little boy or a little girl is disturbed inside and it shows up as anxiety, or maybe it shows up that you didn't feel safe to say what you needed to say, don't pick on yourself. Don't jump to, oh, you're stupid, you should have spoken your tools. Now you got to call your sponsor and say you didn't set a boundary. That's the wrong approach. It never works. In fact, we're continuing the abusive cycle and we're hurting our child further. We become the oppressors that our parents were to us, or whoever did it to you in the past, and now I'm doing it to myself. Instead, this compassionate inquiry is I'm going to take the time to sit with my child and say, what's going on, buddy? Hey, how are you feeling? What's happening? Do you need something? Is there something I can do? What needs to be addressed? What part of this got to you? Or what part of it upsets you? Or what aspect of this do we need to attend to? Or do you just need a treat? Do you just need to just watch a movie and relax? But this being kind in our speech and in our approach to ourselves, I will tell you it's an impossibility for a newcomer. And the first thing we try to do in therapy, and I do all the time, is we're going to change the negative language. This self-talk is not working for you. You're in a mental hospital and you're using alcohol and drugs to numb out and almost kill yourself because you are your own worst enemy. And most addicts and alcoholics I know would agree with that statement because of the committee in our head and all the voices that are going 100% all the time. I heard one of my patients call it the noise in his head. Kind of like schizophrenia, a little bit different variety, but the loudest voice at the table I've found is the self-critic. You're not good enough. You should be doing more. You need to do better. While you're wasting your day, you need to be a star. Look at you, you're better than that. And it's like, I'm just trying to live my life and get along. And I'm not allowing my child to have their feelings. You get what I'm saying on this? At this moment that we're critiquing, did I stuff it? Did I not stuff it? Am I compartmentalizing? We are not being friendly to the emotions of it. We're up in our head analyzing what I did or should have done or didn't do different. Instead, we should be asking that compassionate inquiry, what's going on? How did that affect you? Why did we not speak? Is there a reason? Is that connected to something in your past about why you didn't speak, where it didn't feel safe? So maybe that person brought up your dad energy. And your dad being a drunk, it wasn't safe to say something because he'd clobber you with the back of his hand. So maybe with this one person, your customer, your coworker, whoever it was, not related to your dad, but that brought up that energy and you had no idea it stirred up that trauma. And out of the response of being safe, when you get fight or flight involved, you will shut up. It's an old joke. I don't know if it fully applies, but I'm going to say it. Richard Pryor live in concert talking about people say, I tell those Nazis where to go in World War II. And he goes, you wouldn't have said shit. He said, the Nazi would have looked at you and said, what have we here? And then he said, brother be like, oh, nothing. I'm just, no, it's all cool. Yeah, no, you nice suit. That's what trauma does, is we have the best intentions. I should have said something. I should have set the boundary. I should have spoken up, and door slammed shut. Fear, protection, survival, fight or flight, those are more powerful than reasoning. So that's the angle I would ask you to, get with your sponsor, get with your supports later, and not in a critical way. Don't analyze and beat yourself up, but say, hey, this is what happened. Kind of like we talked about the objective inventory. This is what happened. I'm not sure what was going on, but I sure would like some insight because you've known me a while. What do you think? I feel like this is kind of related to my dad's stuff that we talked about in my fifth step. And then they'll be like, oh, yeah, man, that makes sense because your dad did this. And you'll be like, oh, I didn't even think about that, blah, blah, blah. Again, that objective person to help you walk through it. Someone who's kind and compassionate and has your back. And it's safe. Men particularly have an issue with this because it does not feel safe with other men. And I'm very fortunate to be part of a men's group where we are rock solid. You can pull up and share your emotions with another dude and he will be there for you. And he will honor your tears and honor your pain and not go, oh, what's wrong with you, dude? Pull it up, pull yourself together. Blah, blah, blah. Let's go watch a game. So again, we got extra blocks as men. In some ways, you ladies have an advantage. You can access your emotions easier than we can. But if you go on that journey of compassionate inquiry to really study the origins of where did this come from? Why did I not speak up? Well, how come my boss spoke up but I didn't speak up? Or how this person said this and I didn't say that? And almost always there's a thread that you start pulling on and it becomes a little bit of a wider thread and then you're like, oh, there's really something there. And that is what needs to be healed. Not the fact that I compartmentalized or what I did in the moment that you said here. It's actually this that needs to be addressed. But I need a sponsor and supports to get to the bottom of that. So I hope that's helpful, but I got to tell you, that inner critic is a bastard. And if you want, feel free to, my favorite tool is just scream as loud as you can, shut the fuck up. And I won't do it right now, but I'll be in the car and just like, ah, shut up. So anybody that's in early recovery and your disease is kicking your ass or the voices, negative voices, when you tell it to shut the hell up, guess what happens? It gets quiet for a second. Really scream it, though. It's pretty good. Or just do a primal scream while you're listening to Zeppelin or some loud music. It's the same effect. You'll get a rush, and it quiets the noise. So what do you think about this critic aspect, Dan? Trying to treat yourself with a little bit more kindness, for God's sakes.
Well, it's just like you said in the beginning. It's all this stuff takes practice. It does. You just have to, repetition. And the more I, at least in my experience, to speak from the I, the more I delved into content like this where I heard people talking about it, that's helped my rewiring and been my ability to be conscious of it rather than have the immediate responses. And I don't scream it, but inside my head, I still have those, I see those reactions happen now. I see them all, some get by me. I mean, I'm not begin to say that I'm perfect on any of this stuff, but I catch stuff a whole lot better and there just isn't a whole lot of stuff that gets through that filter anymore. It's, and I say, shut the fuck up. You don't, whoever's talking in that, whoever's in the committee that's saying that is wrong. And, treat myself with more compassion.
And then
do the best myself. I can, man.
You're wrong, and I am good, and I am worthy, and I am capable, and whatever they're challenging you on, tell yourself the opposite.
Yeah. So,
but we're changing tapes that have been laid down a long time ago.
Yeah.
Bro. I know if you don't mind sharing that tape of you feeling like you had to wake up early to be productive for the day.
Yeah, and it's still one that I somewhat fight, but it took a long time, and my dad didn't mean to put that into me, but I have that productivity debt thing where I feel like if I'm wasting time, then I'm not earning his love. And and I can think back to it is when I would get up early and get going and all that, he would reward me positively for doing it. And by nothing more than just rewarding me positive. Maybe if I'd have slept till 10, he'd have done the same thing. I don't know. But I attached it to that, I get his love when I succeed and when I get up and get going and when I'm not wasting time. And, for a long time, we live together now, and when he first moved in, I felt uncomfortable taking a nap. I'd gotten pretty used to taking naps, but I didn't want him catching me taking a nap, right? And he don't care. Actually, if I go up there right now and say, "Hey, Dad, I'm gonna kick up my feet for a little bit," he said, "I don't blame you. I would too." And we joke around because it's like, "What are you getting ready to do?" "I'm getting ready to take a nap," and I don't have no problem just being that today and wasting that time. But it took a lot it just took repetition, just like what we said. It just took a long time to get that tape to stop playing.
It's deep in our culture. I mean, what's the phrase? Up and at 'em.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Early bird gets the worm.
Jump right out. Up and at 'em. Let's go. And the military, you're starting at 5 in the morning. You go to school, these kids are getting up early, getting right at it. Churches, I remember my
The
dad was
influencers, there's one in particular that gets up every morning and posts his 4:30 shot of his watch on his wrist to let you know that he's up.
Oh, that makes you such a better person than me.
The whole hustle culture thing, and I started a little bit getting roped into it, but I am like opposed to it now. Now, if it works for you, go for it. But for my personal life, that falling into that hustle just doesn't work for me.
Part of the hustle culture is downright dangerous. These people that are not getting enough sleep are going to end up with Alzheimer's. That's another aspect of the technology, that we are not getting enough sleep from TV, gaming, and phones and whatever, and that blue light stimulating you. By the way, my sister taught me as a wellness nurse, turn your phone upside down on your bedside table. Even when it's up, this blue light can still affect your sleep. Strange enough. And because we're so keyed up with that, we're not getting that sound deep REM sleep. And that's when your body heals every night. And if you don't reboot your phone every now and then, it's going to self-destruct. Same deal with your mind. And this is creating Alzheimer's in people and dementia, because their brains are getting that amyloid plaque and inflammation from not having the chance to dump those toxins during your sleep. So go ahead, brag about your 5-hour sleep last night and how much you got done before I got up. I'm going to live longer than you. Yeah. And I'm going to know where I am and know who I am when I live longer. And to me, I'm always laughing about, we live in this bubble in America. We're so America-centric, thinking the whole world is like this. Meanwhile, in Italy, they have this phrase called la dolce vita, which is the sweet life, which means they take their time and do whatever the fuck they want when they have a chance to. If they decide to go sit in the cafe and just stare at people on the sidewalk, they'll spend a whole afternoon just doing that. Or if they decide to sleep in, and I'm just going to lay here in my bed and just enjoy the moment of being in my bed and how comfortable it feels, and I don't have to get up and I have a day off. And that's it. That's all I'm doing. I'm just being in my bed. And look at your pets. How happy are your pets as they're living in the moment of like, oh, we might eat or we might sleep, but I'm just hanging out. What are you doing? And they come over. Another one of my patients, their cat kept trying to stick on the video. And I'm like, let the cat sit. The cat knows. The cat feels my energy. Let the cat be. We're talking about higher power. The cat wants to join us. But she was like pushing it away because we're really not supposed to have our pets on. But I'm a little bit lax on that. But they teach us. And what are they teaching us? You're missing your life, which is kind of the whole point of today's podcast.
Yep. And, once again, I used to get up and hit the door, from the moment I got out of bed like a Tasmanian devil, and just spun to see how much I could get done in a day. And I like the analogy, and I don't remember who said it. I get 100 gigabytes of energy to use every day. And I get to decide how I'm going to use them. And negative energy doesn't get the mileage that positive energy gets, for one thing. So if I'm going to chew on this negative stuff, I'm going to be burning up my gigabytes quickly. Mm-hmm. And what happens if I have a day like that, I will lay my head down on the bed totally exhausted at night to where I'm just like done. I've overused my allotted gigabytes. When I float good at about using about 75% of them a day, not going real hard, saving some, and trying to stay away from the negative things. When I lay my head down at 75%, I still got good gigabytes left, and I go right to sleep and no worries today. And I kind of think of a mental gauge on my day of how much of I don't want to be used up at the end of every day. That's no way to live. And it's the way I pushed myself for many years.
It's just the American Western world of my value is based on what I do.
Yeah.
And it's not in recovery.
And there's never
your value is based on you just being who you are, and we love you just the way you are.
And you'll never catch up. There's not
measure.
That's what I mean. When you are working at that level, you will never, ever, ever catch up. But you feel like I always felt like there was some time when I was going to get to that point, and it would be like, I get here, I will be able to slow down for a minute. When I get this done, and
or go on vacation,
and you just never run out of you don't that spot doesn't
like
exist.
Guys that go to the gym and chase the perfect body, and then there's always going to be that dude who's more cut than you there.
Yeah,
it's like, well, they keep moving the cheese. I'm going for the goal, but the cheese gets getting moved. So,
who moved the cheese?
So what the upshot from the email is, just let's work on our way we talk to ourselves, that compassionate inquiry. I'm going to go on the journey to find out why and what's related to, what's connected to how I acted in that moment for stuffing it or compartmentalizing it. What emotions came up in me, that's always the great barometer in therapy. How do you feel? What's going on? And talk to your sponsors, talk to your supports. And I'm just blessed, man. I had a sponsor, Roger, that was just so kind in the way he spoke to me. I could not have had a sponsor that was like my dad, the way my dad spoke to me. That would not have worked for me in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I would go on record to say, pick someone who doesn't remind you of your dad.
Yeah.
It just seems to work better. All right, we need to wrap this sucker up. But listen, folks, we really greatly appreciate you being with us on this journey. And we only ask of one thing, small thing. It's a service work thing. We're trying to get this out to as many people as possible. Our numbers are getting better. But if we don't reach a certain threshold, we're going to be buried underneath the weight of all the other content on YouTube. And the way you get your numbers up is subscribe, like, comment. Subscribe, like, comment. If you can do any of those things for us, awesome. We appreciate it. Plus, we're hoping to create a community where people can talk on the comments and share experiences and reply to each other and things like that. So let's do that. And we will continue to do our part and provide what we're doing. But we want the whole world to have access to recovery because it's the greatest journey to go on. Do this for yourself. You definitely are worth it. As we say at the end of meetings, work it because you're worth it. All right. We'd like to close with the Serenity Prayer the way I do it in my therapy group to try and cheer people up on the way out the door. So, Serenity Prayer, Dan.
All right.
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. You die if you don't. Woo! Goodbye, everybody. We love you. Come back. See us next time.